Rihanna just gave us a masterclass in doing the most while doing the least. And she did it in heels, at night, pushing a stroller with 2 toddlers in it. No security detail drama, no red carpet, just a woman walking down a New York sidewalk with her kids. And somehow that's the story dominating entertainment timelines this week. Here's what actually went down. Late at night, Rihanna stepped out in New York City with all 3 of her children, sons RZA and Riot, and baby daughter Rocki, for what looked like a totally ordinary family walk. Except nothing involving Rihanna in public stays ordinary for long. Cameras found her almost immediately, and what should have been a quiet evening turned into a full-blown paparazzi moment on a random city block. The logistics alone are what got people talking. She had baby Rocki strapped to her chest in a leopard print carrier, one hand resting protectively on her daughter's head to block the camera flashes, while her other hand steered a stroller holding both boys, seated across from each other. That's 3 kids, 0 visible help, and she's doing it in an oversized striped shirt, black tights, a baseball cap, sunglasses and heels, not sneakers, heels, on a night stroll, with a baby carrier. That detail alone became the entire internet's personality for about 24 hours. $AP Rocki wasn't with them. No explanation given, no need for one. But it's worth noting because it meant every camera, every reaction, every "how is she doing this" comment landed squarely on Rihanna, solo parenting 3 kids under 5 in real time, in public, unbothered. Timing matters here too. This wasn't a daytime errand run with soft lighting and a cordy backdrop. This was a late-night outing, the kind of walk that usually happens when a parent is trying to burn off a toddler's last bit of energy before bed or get a fussy baby to settle. That's a detail photo agencies don't usually get access to, because most celebrity parents run those late walks on private property or skip them in favor of staying indoors specifically to avoid this exact scenario. Rihanna didn't. She took the walk anyway, in the middle of Manhattan, at an hour when the cameras are usually looking for literally anyone else. That choice, or lack of a choice, if the kids simply needed the walk, is part of why this story has legs. It's not staged looking. There's no glam squad polish visible in any of the images, no matching outfits, no obvious coordination with a photographer. It reads as logistics, not content strategy. And that's precisely the kind of unpolished footage that tends to outperform an actual planned shoot. Normally, when paparazzi corner a celebrity's kids, the conversation turns into a debate about privacy and boundaries. That didn't really happen here. Instead, the comment sections turned into a parenting support group. The Shade Room's Instagram post about the outing filled up fast, and the tone wasn't judgmental, it was recognition. One commenter summed up the collective disbelief, writing that walking in heels while carrying a baby is wild, joking that having a kid permanently retires your feet from anything but comfort shoes. That comment alone unlocked a whole subplot of the story, the designer bags to Crocs pipeline. Instagram users started riffing on how motherhood flattens your footwear game regardless of your bank account. And the joke landed specifically because it's Rihanna, a billion-dollar beauty and fashion mogul, out here in the same stroller juggling, flash-dodging position as anyone doing a 9 p.m. walk to get a toddler to sleep. The wealth gap disappeared for a second, and that's rare. The other major thread running through the comments was about the kids' faces. People couldn't get over how similar RZA, Riot, and Rocki looked to each other. One comment that kept getting reposted joked that all 3 kids clearly got the same face, and that observation turned into its own mini-trend, with fans zooming into photos comparing sibling features like it was a genetics experiment. It's a low-stakes, wholesome kind of viral moment. Nobody's dragging anyone. Everyone's just entertained. There's a third layer to the reaction that's easy to miss if you're only skimming the top comments. The tones split by platform. On Instagram, where the audience skews toward moms and lifestyle commentary, the conversation stayed almost entirely in solidarity mode, shared exhaustion, shared humor, zero criticism. On X, The same footage generated a slightly different conversation, with more posts framing the outing as proof that Rihanna is simply built different, unbothered at her by an assignment that would flatten most people. Same photos, two different narratives, depending on which app you scrolled into. That's a good example of how quickly one set of images gets reprocessed into separate storylines depending on the audience reading it. Then there's the volume of the reaction itself, which is worth pausing on. This wasn't a modest ripple. It was the kind of comment surge that outpaces most standard celebrity sightings, which tells you the story tapped into something bigger than famous person spotted outside. It tapped into the ongoing cultural fascination with what famous parenting actually looks like once the cameras catch it off guard instead of during a Carmerd campaign or a magazine spread. Here's the part that's mildly ironic if you sit with it. This walk reads as a chill, no-frills mom moment. Comfortable clothes, late hour, no entourage visible in most of the photography. But it happened in one of the most photographed, most surveilled cities on Earth, and it took approximately 0 minutes for a professional photo agency to be on the scene with a full shoot's worth of images. The just a regular mom out for a walk framing and the paparazzi frenzy that generated wire-ready photo sets reality are sitting right next to each other. And most of the coverage isn't reconciling that. There's also a quieter contradiction in the protective instinct on display. Rihanna is visibly shielding Rocki's face from the flashes with her hand, which is the universal gesture of a parent trying to keep a child out of the spotlight. At the same time, RZA. There's also a quieter contradiction in the protective instinct on display. Rihanna is visibly shielding Rocki's face from the flashes with her hand, which is the universal gesture of a parent trying to keep a child out of the spotlight. At the same time, RZA, old enough now to clock what's happening, didn't shrink from the cameras at all. Multiple accounts describe him noticing the photographers and either glancing over or giving them a small wave. Completely unbothered, while Riot stayed locked into the stroller ride, oblivious to the chaos around him. 3 kids, 3 completely different relationships to being photographed, all captured in the same 5 minutes. That's the real texture of this story. Not scandal, just an oddly specific split screen of how each kid is processing fame that isn't technically theirs yet. Add to that the bodyguard detail that barely got mentioned anywhere. Reports on the outing note that security was present, walking a few steps behind the family the whole time. That's not nothing. It means the just a mom out for an evening walk framing was, at minimum, a walk with a professional presence already built into it. The idea that this was a fully unguarded, security-free evening. The photos sell casualness. The full picture includes a support system that most parents obviously don't have on a random Tuesday. There's one more wrinkle worth flagging, and it's less about contradiction than about scale. A single set of nighttime photos, taken over what was probably a 15 to 20-minute window, has now generated coverage discussing outfit choices, sibling resemblance, parenting philosophy, platform, ND, specific reaction patterns, and speculation about staging, all from images that show, functionally, a woman walking down a sidewalk. That gap between the size of the actual event and the size of the conversation it produced is the story underneath the story. Entertainment outlets picked this up fast. And what's notable is the framing. This isn't being covered as a privacy controversy, and it's not being covered as a fashion moment either, even with the heels detail doing numbers. It's being covered as a candid celebrity parenting story, which is its own genre now and tends to perform well, precisely because it strips away the aspirational distance between a star and their audience. Outlets ran with headlines built around the good girl gone mom angle specifically because it plays on her old public image versus the reality of her current, very hands-on daily life. That contrast is doing a lot of the heavy lifting in why this story traveled as far as it did. There's also a pattern worth flagging for anyone tracking how this kind of content spreads. A single nighttime outing generated multiple separate articles across different outlets within about 24 to 48 hours, each pulling from the same handful of photo agency images and building slightly different angles. One focused on the fashion, one on the sibling resemblance jokes, one on the solo parenting optics. That's a sign of a story with strong recirculation value, not necessarily a sign of a major news event. The underlying footage is identical everywhere. It's the framing that's being remixed. Titular outing outpaced a typical star spotted in the city post. It had two separate audiences pulling it in two directions at once, and both of them found something to latch onto. The mother-daughter attention didn't end with the nighttime walk. Within days, Rihanna and Rocki were spotted out again, this time with Rocki dressed in a black and white polka dot outfit with matching Vans and hair accessories, looking directly at the cameras with an ease that immediately got compared to her mother's own paparazzi presence. Rihanna, for her part, kept the same low-effort, high-impact energy, dark sunglasses, minimal styling, completely unbothered posture. The commentary this time skewed even more toward the baby, with people noting how confidently she engaged with the cameras for a child who isn't even a year old yet. That second outing matters for the larger arc here because it reframes the first one. If this were a one-off, you could chalk the paparazzi swarm up to bad luck or a random tip. Two outings within the same week, both photographed extensively, both generating separate news cycles, starts to look less like an accident and more like a recurring pattern that comes with being a public parent in a passion city where photo agencies are working around the clock. Whether that's something the family is actively managing or simply living with is the part nobody outside the household actually knows. If there's a real consequence brewing here, it's not a scandal. It's a shift in how Rihanna's family is being covered going forward. Once outlets get multiple, usable, high-engagement photo sets of the kids together in a short window, that becomes the new baseline expectation. Every future sighting gets compared to this one. If she's photographed without all three kids, that becomes its own headline. If the kids are photographed without her, that becomes a headline too. This kind of coverage tends to snowball once the appetite for it is proven, and the numbers on this particular round of posts suggest the appetite is very much proven. There's also a subtler consequence for the kids themselves, even if nobody's framing it that way yet. RZA is old enough to actively react to cameras now, which means he's crossing into the phase where he's not just being photographed, he's participating in being photographed, waving, glancing, engaging. That's a different dynamic than an infant being carried through a crowd, and it's the kind of shift that tends to accelerate media interest rather than slow it down, since an